Cbus, the super fund, has been facing controversy lately after allegations of them delaying death payments from super funds and at other times not paying them out at all. Coalition is now targeting the chair, Wayne Swan, saying he needs to explain what happened. Joining the panel now is Shadow Assistant Minister for Home Ownership, Andrew Bragg, who I think it's fair to say takes aim at super funds from time to time. Why Wayne Swan? We've heard from the CEO. What's critical about him? Is this a bit of a political angle because he's a pretty big figure within the Labor Party?
Well, we use the power of the Senate to progress issues in the national interest, right? So we do inquiry, we undertake analysis, we try to get to the bottom of things. So in this case, Mr Swan is the chair of the fund. The board is responsible under the law for running the fund. And so we have many questions for Mr Swan.
So he's not going to answer them, though? What's going to happen from here?
Well, Mr Swan has been given a warning that he needs to attend the Senate, and if he doesn't, he will face a summons.
OK, well, watch that space. What about the coalition broadly on super? Do you think it's fair to say, or perhaps the Liberal Party, there's still a strong element within the Liberal Party that would like to pull support for compulsory super?
We prioritise home ownership. We believe that people owning a little piece of earth which is their own is one of the most important things in our country. And for millennials and Gen Zs, that trajectory is not on track. And we think super can really help. That's why it's one of our policies.
All right, but the biggest problem at the moment is the cost of construction. It's the cost of building. It's the labour shortages. Giving a bunch of people a whole lot of money to be able to buy their first home when there are no homes isn't really the answer, is it?
You can't solve this problem without building a lot more houses, and housing construction has collapsed under this government. So in 2018, we were getting 220,000 houses, and now with this year, we're back to 160,000
What's your
houses.
answer? What's your answer?
Well, we've got a $5 billion supply fund, and we're going to put a 10-year freeze on the NCC, National Construction Code, because we know the cost of construction is out of control.
Is there something else?
Was also putting the CFMEU out of business properly. I mean, the fact is the CFMEU still owns the Cbus super fund. They're nominating directors onto the fund, they're taking dividends out of the fund, but they're not paying fees. So Labor has let these unions and super funds run rampant.
To what
we wouldn't let that happen.
Are you saying the CFMEU's driven up the cost of
30% premium on apartment builds thanks to the CFMEU, and Labor thinks this is all a big surprise. I mean, everyone knew that these guys are up to no good, and Labor pretends like that.
Well, what practices are they following that's causing that?
Well, they're inflating the cost of construction by putting bogus workers onto work sites, all sorts of different lurks and perks that they have. As you know, it's been well documented by the 9 newspapers' investigations.
You mentioned millennials and Gen Zs. At the next election, they're going to outnumber baby boomers in each of the states and territories for the first time. What are the Liberals doing to try and target these younger generational cohorts? What policies do you have for them?
Well, I mean, housing is my area, so obviously I talk about that. I mean, opening up super is a key policy because for many people, without access to the bank of mum and dad, that's their biggest pool of capital. So giving them access to that's one. We're also looking at lending rules. So this week we're putting down a report looking at finding ways to bend the scale for first home buyers through lending policy. So that's two good examples that I think we look forward to talking about during the campaign.
And more broadly, do you think that the Liberal Party on a whole has done enough to rehabilitate its image of following the defeat of the last election?
Yeah, and I think people will look at our economic record, will look at what we're putting forward in terms of practical policies, particularly on things like housing, as attractive because everyone knows the squeeze on housing is real, whether you're a renter or a mortgagee. So I think these practical ideas around lending and super are very important.
Last time we spoke, you said you were looking at increasing that amount that you were going to allow, if you win the election, people to access from their super. Have you landed on a number yet?
It's still under consideration, and at the moment the policy is $50,000. If we had an election on Saturday, it would be $50,000.
But you might. It sounds like it's a work in progress. As work under consideration. So is your hope that you bump it up to take to the election at a higher level?
It's a possibility. I mean, $50,000 would make a real difference. But obviously, if people have more than that, then I think that the most important form of savings is actually a home. So we want to try and prioritise that.
And whatever that is, will you model what that will do on house prices? Because it will be open to everybody on that certain date before anything you can do for supply takes effect. There's a lag effect on house supply.
Well, of course, and that's why getting the supply is critical. I mean, you cannot solve
But
this
it
problem.
won't be in place. So will you model what it would do to house prices?
Well, of course, but you're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar market here, right? You're talking about an immaterial change in the overall market.
You're saying that before you've done the modelling.
But that's
made up your mind on that.
But we know that it's a multi-trillion-dollar market, right? It's $3 or $4 trillion, and you'd be talking about, tens or maybe hundreds of billions of dollars.
But all towards one particular market too, and you say maybe it's only a few hundred
Tom,
thousand
there's
people.
no way it would be material, right? And in assessing materiality, as you know, it's got to be more than 10%.
McKay Cash had some strong comments yesterday about the Bali 9 and really whether that was the priority to get the rest of them back. What's your personal view on that?
Well, I mean, there's obviously a process they're facing in Indonesia, and I don't propose to add my personal view here. These are matters that should be discussed between the governments, and I think there's a degree of sensitivity here.
Do you think the Prime Minister should have lobbied for their release directly to the leader of Indonesia?
Oh, I think the Prime Minister should always put the interests of Australians first, but that should be balanced against what is going to be in the long-term interest of that very important bilateral relationship.
You said, just to go back, material, because it'll be less than 10%.
It'll still be more than 10%.
So if it's a 9%, if prices go up 9% just because of this policy, then that's immaterial and it doesn't matter?
You've still got to look at how many houses you can get. As I say, we're down to 160,000 houses this year under Labor, right? The same number that we had in 1989 when the population was more like 17 or 18 million people. So you've got to get the housing construction up to at least
I understand that.
a quarter of a million.
You can't do that straight away. The policy comes in straight away. So you're saying as long as it's not 10%,
why?
then it's fine.
But why can't you build more houses with a more...
Well, you can't do it in a day. The policy that's going to come in, you won't have built your extra houses. You can't do it in 2 months. It's not possible. A house takes more than 2 months to build.
If you have a more practical approach to getting houses built, I mean, the Housing Australia...
You can do it in 2 months?
Well, the Housing Australia Future Fund, for example, is a big government approach where Labor spent billions on bureaucracies and they're building fewer houses than we built. Vastly fewer.
All right. Not sure you can do it in 2 months, though?
Well, I'm confident that we can deploy practical policies that will get houses built and first home buyers into them.
Andrew Bragg, thanks for your time.
Thanks.
You are watching